Hello and welcome to another video from Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. Today I shall be making over this Austin taxi cab that first came out in 1960. It's the number 17C, and I've looked on the internet out of interest, and if you had one of these models in 9 out of 10 condition, it could be worth €375, which is crazy money for one of these tiny little toys. Anyway, this one has seen better days. It is definitely not a 9 out of 10. As you can see, the maroon paint has been scuffed off due to probably age and play. The drive is pretty good. The interior is a bit ordinary, a bit dirty, and the axles are corroded. Here's a close-up of that driver. Can you see he's wobbling around in there? He's pretty loose, so I'll have to fix him up and make him solid again. So I'm going to drill out the front rivet, and the rear of the model is held in place by some little flared ears on the chassis. To drill out this rivet I used just a suitably sized drill. It's never the same drill for those people who are interested. You just have to get a load of drills and test them out and find out which one fits. I'm removing the minimum amount of material here, just so I can prise the front of the underbase here off the model. So using a flat bladed screwdriver, I gently lever it up and it comes away quite easily. Now as for those flared ears, they just always need just a slight wiggle and a tug, and they separate, and they're good enough to go back together again. There you can see the driver fell out of his seat and he's upside down. Having a look at him, he's not too bad. There's a couple of, a bit of dirt on him and some paint missing. So I could probably get away with a clean, but I think I'm going to strip him down and repaint him. The base comes in various shades of dark grey, or medium to dark grey. This is where the driver sits. He's got like a plug on his bum that sticks in that hole. I'll probably glue him back in. Now here's the main body. As you can see, it's a maroon colour, and these also came out in varying shades of maroon, some dark, some light. Depended who was mixing the paint in the factory on a particular day. To begin with, I'm going to drill out this rivet post at the front of the model, and then I'm going to tap it with a 2mm tap, which will cut a thread in there so I can use a 2M screw to put the base back on this model when I've finished. It's a bit of swarf of, metal filings, so I just clean those up as I go because they're horrendous if they get in the carpet. Here's one of those M2 domed headed hex screws that I use. This one's a short one. I also have some long ones, and this is the 2mm tap in this hand tapping device here, or a hand chuck. You can see they're 2mm because they're etched on there too. And I'm going to cut a thread in that post, that front post, so that, as I said before, I can put that M2 screw in to hold the base on. There's a close-up of the tap. You can see it's fluted, which means it has channels there which collect the metal filings as you're cutting the thread. It's a very simple case here of just using hand pressure to screw this device into that hole, and the thread is cut. There's a close-up of it there, and you can see this 2M screw, again in a different style of hand chuck, with an Allen key in it, just screws into place. Now I leave that in there because when I paint the model it's going to be maroon, and the original rivet was maroon, so when you look at the underside of the model it's going to look fairly original. Now to remove these axles and wheels, I've got to take that little mushroom head off of the end of the axle there. This wheel is a little bit stiff due to corrosion or whatever, so I just work it down the axle to give me maximum clearance between the mushroom head and the wall of the tyre, because I don't want to damage the tyre or the wheel. Now I use these rubber vice clamps here so I don't crush the model up unnecessarily. And using this cylindrical sanding stone, I just take that edge off of that mushroom head and I can remove the wheels. Very simple. quite awkward. You don't want to damage the wheel. Here I'm showing you I did not touch the wheel at all there, so there is no damage. You just have to be very careful when you're doing this and wear some magnifying glasses. That's what I do to make sure you don't damage the wheel. Now here you can see the front axle's bent, so I'll have to straighten that before I put it back in. Now before I paint strip the model, I'm mixing up some matching paint. So basically I need grey, maroon to a certain shade. The shades aren't important. And some tan for the driver. Now this here, the Mr. Hobby paint russet that I was going to use and blend it with some black paint, I couldn't get the lid off. Actually no, this is the purple red. I was going to go with the russet, but I went with the purple red. Anyway, a subscriber told me that one easy way of removing a stuck paint lid is to dip the lid into some boiling water for just half a minute or so, and it will loosen the paint in the screw threads of the lid. And I should be able to pull it off. So I'm testing that now, and look at that. The boiling water has worked. So that is absolutely fantastic tip there for all of you out there that are interested in taking up this hobby. So here's a description of the paints that I use to make up the various colours. I've got the three colours: the base, the driver and the body. Now the body is a rather dark burgundy colour. And I do actually, as you will see later, struggle to get it right. So now I've matched the paints, I can now strip the original paint off of these pieces. I use these hemostats and I pick a point where I can hold the model. It's not going to be seen when it's back together. Because obviously where the forceps are gripping the model, there will be no paint. So now that I've got these on the forceps, I just use this polish stripper paint stripper gel, my favourite product, and I just splurge it onto the model using a random brush that I am willing to throw away if necessary. It's one brush I keep specifically for this use. I liberally spread the paint stripper onto the model and I let it work its magic. It only takes 5 minutes, and then I scrub it off with a toothbrush, normally a pink toothbrush. I don't know why I'm using a yellow toothbrush today. Anyway, I scrub the paint off in a little bath there in a disposable food container, and the bath contains some detergent and warm water, and most of this paint came off first go around, which is always a win. Here's a close-up of the driver now that he's stripped down. He's quite detailed really, a very nice face and hat on him. I'm going to put these wheels in this ultrasonic cleaner, which is a great thing for wheels, I've found out. I've run it for 15 minutes in the special cleaning solution. I put the wheels in a little plastic basket there, you may have seen. Now after 15 minutes I fish them out and check them out. I drain off the cleaning product through a sieve and tip these wheels out and dry them off. They're very soapy, they've got a very soapy feel to them. Countless times I've dropped them on the floor because they just slip out from between your fingers. So it must be the cleaning solution that is in the ultrasonic cleaner. But here's a close-up of those wheels, and look at them, they look factory fresh to all intents and purposes. Under this magnification you can see slight imperfections. These axles I straighten out and clean up with some emery paper and a little bit of metal polish. And now I'm going to use this Tamiya fine surface primer in light grey to coat the model, the base and the little man in preparation for spraying the top coat colour that they need to be. You don't want to put too much of this on, because I have in the past and it conceals the detail. But with these models, they are so detailed you want to preserve as much of it as you can. That's what I feel. Now look at the base there. I think there's maybe a tiny little bit of moisture there that's reacted with the undercoat, so I'm going to have to redo that. Here's a close-up of the driver. He's still wet, it will dry matte. And I use these magnetic clamps and forceps to lock them into place there to dry. Now here's a close-up of the model after it's been undercoated. You can see there's some old style indicator arms in the door frame, or in the door pillar. Ooh, wow, I've seen better radiators before now, but it is so intricate. I'm going to leave it as is and hopefully conceal that with some silver paint. It's got an extra spotlight on the front there and 2 headlights. And this is the base after I repainted it. You can still see that minor imperfection, but with the naked eye you can't. So I just want to make that clear. Looking at him now, he looks like he's actually got hair detail on him. And that there in the door is kind of, I think it's like a little sign that says taxi vacant, taxi in use. I'm not too sure. I should Google that. Now it's only now I notice that the left hand A pillar is cracked. So I now have to fix that using some of this Starbond medium viscosity super glue. I apply it with a tiny little toothpick here, and I apologize for the poor photography at this point in time, but I was concentrating so hard on getting it in the proper place. And then I dust the super glue with some baking soda. And as you may or may not know, the baking soda and the glue form an instant chemical bond that is as strong, or almost as strong, as the metal itself. So it looks a bit ordinary now, but I'm just going to clean it up with some tiny little emery pads, emery sticks I should say, of varying roughness. And I just work away until I look at it and I think, well, that's close enough to what it should look like, and it's concealing the break. So I just give it a quick dust over of some more undercoat. There's a shot before the undercoat, but rest assured it looks quite good after I've undercoated it. So now everything has been undercoated, it's time to paint the parts the correct colour to resemble the original model. Now, as I said before, the base and the interior has varying shades of grey. It's kind of like they didn't really care. Some were light and some were dark and some were medium. Well, I've gone with like a medium grey, I guess you could say. And it went on quite smooth and looks quite good. The only problem with these paints is they're all matte or flat finish. So at the end of the day, I have to spray everything with some high gloss varnish to make it look like it should. Of course, the annoying thing with using multiple colours of paints in the spray gun is you have to pause each time and meticulously clean out the spray gun, which is what I'm doing now. As you can see, I block the nozzle off and run some air through it, and it percolates in the paint pot, and it kind of clears out any residue that might be there. I then do a test by spraying thinners onto a clean piece of tissue to see if there's any taint left in the brush. So that's clean, so I've done the grey, now it's onto the burgundy. And remember, I mixed this burgundy up before, and I felt that I did a damn good job of it. But unfortunately, as you will see, the burgundy colour that I mixed dries completely different to what I anticipated. And it's very annoying when this happens because it sets you back a couple of hours. You have to reapply some undercoat, and then you have to reapply the top coat. And then you have to reapply the varnish if that's what you're using, which I am in this case. So this is a wet coat and it looks quite good, but when it dries it looks pretty ordinary. Coming up in the video you will see what I mean. Now this little driver, I guess I might have been able to get away with just leaving him original, but he did have a chip missing off his hat. It was a little bit off his chest, I think. So I decided to go with the matching tan paint and just try and make him look like new again. Again, I'm using those magnetic clamps to hold him in position whilst he dries. Now the paint on the base and the model I baked in the oven to dry it off, so that when I applied the varnish it wouldn't react with any moisture that was left in the paint or thinners. Taking it out of the oven, I looked at that and it looks very, very dark, and I thought, well, maybe, just maybe, if I spray it with some top coat varnish it's going to look good, and it didn't. It looks very black and very dull and very, very ordinary and nothing like the original. So I have to strip it back and do it again. Having a look at these axles and wheels and the chassis, I'm now going to put these back together, which is one step closer to where I want to be. Now, sometimes there is a good and a bad side to these wheels, but in all instances here, they were all good sizes. They were all good sides, so it didn't really matter. Now, using my ARS axle reforming system, I am now reforming the end of the axles using these modified nails in my drill press. Now, this was wobbling out of control last week, so what I've done is I've put the nail in further in the chuck so that the vibration is lessened. I'm also holding the axle with some small pliers, and that prevents the axle from turning and actually improves the finish of the homemade mushroomed end. Here's a close-up of them. As you can see, they look quite good, and they definitely retain the wheels. And the wheels spin freely, which is always a good thing. Now I've got this little man, and it's time to glue him into position. Again, using the Starbond medium viscosity glue. Just a couple of drops in there, and I push him in. And I actually thought that the stub that comes out the bottom of him would be a tight fit, but it was actually quite loose, so I'm glad I chose to glue it in. Now here's my reference card for the paints, and this is what the top coat looks like. It looks absolutely abysmal, and I'm not happy with it. So I'm going to strip it back and repaint it, which is a real headache because it set me back like another hour. So here we go. Cut out all the boring bits. We're back to the metal again. And this is what it looks like after I've repainted it with a different type of colour. So more closer to the original than it was. And I have put some high gloss varnish on it. And now it's time to put it back together. So first up, I remove the screw in the base. And now I put it back in again. I do like those coloured screws because they kind of look like the original rivet. Now there's one last thing I've got to do, and that's touch up all the silver highlights on the front here. Basically the grille, headlights and bumper bar. I use this Pentel paint pen. I give it a shake and squirt it out, and it floods out there. It doesn't usually happen. I've got enough product there to probably do 5 cars, but never mind, they're not that expensive. And now, using a very fine brush, as you can see, I very, very gently and carefully paint the highlights in silver. Quite often I stuff up here. As you can see on the right hand headlight there, I've got a little bit on the guard, so I have to touch that up with some burgundy, which luckily I always save just for such an occasion, so I can recover from any stuff up I do. And as a little bit of extra bling, I'm just giving some silver paint, silver ink to that hood ornament. Now, here's a reminder of what we started with. Rather shabby looking, and definitely not a 9 out of 10 condition, so that is not worth 375 euros. But maybe this one looks a little bit better. I know it's not original. I think this looks absolutely beautiful. It's such a simple model, but a fair bit of detail in it. And of course I love those suicide doors on the back that open rearwards, and those little lever arm indicators that used to flick out using a electromagnet, because originally the vehicles and motorbikes used to use arm signals, so that's what they were trying to replicate when they first brought out these electronic blinkers. So that's a little bit of interest for you there. Okay, well now I've finished, I've booked this taxi to take me down to the local pub so I can have a quick pint of Bishop's Finger and then I'll head back home. I think I've deserved it. Driver, what? Hey! Kevin! Get out of it, he stole my taxi. What a little Thank you for watching this episode of Marty's Matchbox Makeovers. Please like and subscribe and share with your friends. Oh!